Hey guys, welcome to this session by Intellipaat. So in this session we're going to understand about Jira and how to use it. So Jira is a very popular planning, tracking and managing tool mainly used for software development projects. And before moving on with this session, please subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our upcoming videos, and also leave a like if you like our content and want more of these videos. So now let's take a quick glance at the agenda. First, we'll start off with understanding the Agile process and the Agile terminologies used in Jira. Then we'll learn what are Scrum roles and sprint activities. After that, we'll actually understand what is Jira and also what we can do with it. Moving on, we'll look into setting up your own Jira dashboard. Once this all is done, we'll learn how to use the Jira features in a development environment.
Now, before we begin with the video, this is to inform you guys that if you would like to have access to our study material and PPTs, please reach out to us in the comment section down below. Alright, so let us begin with the Agile process. So, Agile is a software development terminology based on the Agile Manifesto. It is a software development method which basically describes a time-boxed iterative approach to software development to deliver the product incrementally instead of all at once. So, what does that mean? So, let us understand that diagrammatically. So, say you have a software. A software is generally composed of functionalities. So a software is a combination of features. It could be functionality one, two, three, if the software contains of only three functionalities, right? So this is generally how a software is made up. So for each of these functionalities to work the way they have been intended to work, right? The phase that we follow in Agile is planning, implementation, testing, and review. So these are the four phases that are followed in the agile development method, right? For each of the features that are there in the software. So these features could be developed concurrently, simultaneously, or these could be developed one after other as well. It all depends on the use case. But the agile process is not a linear approach. So if we were to narrow it down to just one functionality, we get to the review part first, right? So firstly, we plan the software, we look at all of the requirements that are there for the software, we implement the code, we test the code and the feature, and then we basically look at the test reports and review the feasibility of that functionality within that software. So based on the results of this review, if the review is satisfactory, yes, we add the functionality to the final build or the release that we are creating currently. If it's not satisfactory, we go back to the drawing board, to the planning phase, to look at further improvements that we can make in the design or the revamp that we need for this particular feature. And then the cycle carries on until we reach the point of satisfaction. So this is the agile process. And the agile process works out extremely well because, say, for instance, functionality one has not reached the point of satisfaction, but functionality two and three have. So it's not exactly holding back the development life cycle. We're not holding anybody back because in traditional software development methods, we are usually delivering the final product to the end user. But in the agile process, what we are exactly doing is we're developing features and we're basically communicating those features to the client, to the business that we're making that software for one by one. So we're not exactly bottlenecking anything. So let us understand agile terminologies now. Obviously, in any software development life cycle, there are particular terminologies that you need to understand because there are various approaches to it. So in agile, firstly, we need to understand what we are trying to achieve. So in order to describe what we are exactly trying to achieve after we talk to our client, when we are basically taking the requirements from the client and the client is describing to us what kind of software he wants and what is his business requirements and everything. So essentially, the first component that we create in Agile is an epic, right? So the epic is an abstract view of what we exactly need, right? And then to achieve that epic in the technical aspect of things, right, we start to get into what is required to achieve that epic, right? So even this in an abstract form, we refer to it as stories. So we break the epic down into the features that are required to fulfill that epic, right? And to fulfill those features, we create stories. So these could be subcomponents of the feature or of the epic, right? So these are still in a sort of non-technical format. We are not exactly describing the technical constraints within these stories. So since these stories are generally non-technical in nature, how do we describe the technical aspects of things so that the development team can work on it, right? So for that, we require tasks. So tasks required to fulfill those requirements, and these are the final subcomponents in the agile sort of hierarchy that we have, which basically describes the sprint life cycle and the scrum life cycle, and how developers take their approach to development. So within Jira, we make frequent use of the subcomponents known as epic, story, and task. When we get to the hands-on section, we will understand how to use them. For now, let us understand Scrum rules. Right? In order to achieve software development using the Agile methodology, we use Scrum. So essentially, Agile and Scrum go hand in hand, and Scrum essentially describes the hierarchy of employees that are working for a software development company and how they operate to achieve agile development. So, firstly, we have the product owner, right? So this person doesn't exactly own the software, but this person owns the project and is responsible for the successful completion of the project. So the first and foremost job of the product owner is understanding the requirements of the customer. So in a meeting, when the customer comes into the company and lays out what the customer wants and what are his business needs, the product owner is sitting and noting everything down and understanding what the customer requires. The job of the product owner is to have a thorough discussion with the customer and clearly understand what the customer wants. Uh, the product owner also has to document what the customer wants in the form of epics and convey that information to the development team. Right. The product owner maintains the product backlog, which is the most important role. So the product owner has to track what status the software is currently in, right? So the product owner first defines all of the features that are required in according to the business, and then based on those features, the product owner will maintain a product backlog. Then the Scrum Master and the development team will pick up points from the product backlog and start working on it. The other crucial aspect of the product owner's job is release management. So, if the software is being released on a version basis, the product owner has to keep track of that. Then we have the Scrum Master. So, when we get into the actual Scrum methodology, where developers are following Agile, it is the job of the Scrum Master to glue everything together, to basically serve as an intermediary between the product owner and the development team. Now, the central job of a Scrum Master is to ensure that Scrum methodologies are being followed by the development team. The Scrum Master also has to ensure that they are breaking down the stories or epics into tasks appropriately. The Scrum Master will also manage backlog and will ensure completion of work in the said amount of time, and he also has to ensure that there is a certain amount of transparency between the product owner and the other stakeholders and the development team. And then finally, we have the most important aspect of any software development lifecycle, which is the development team, in this case, the Scrum team. So this consists of software developers and quality assurance people. The main work of the Scrum team is to break down the work into subtasks and finish those subtasks in the said amount of time. So the Scrum team works on the Agile methodology, which is planning, implementation, testing, and preliminary reviewing of goals. So they will test the software and see if it is matching the quality that is needed, if it is matching the acceptance criteria, and then they will ensure timely delivery. with the quality assurance based on how they assess the final product. And then they will communicate their progress and the final product with the Scrum Master, and if it is required, with the stakeholder and the product owner as well. So we have three components in the Scrum environment, which include the product owner, Scrum Master, and the Scrum team. So let us look at an example. The product owner will talk to the client and create a backlog of features that are required in the software. And based on those features, the product owner will create an epic. For instance, let us imagine an epic where the product owner is saying, as a customer, I want to be able to pay for my orders through online wallets. So this is an epic. This is an abstract of what the client may want, right? Now, the Scrum Master will teach and ensure that Scrum practices are followed by the development team, right? And the Scrum team has to learn these Scrum practices and be adept at following them, right? Now, the next thing that happens is based on those Scrum practices and based on the guidance of the Scrum Master, the Scrum team will break this epic down into stories, right? So, this particular epic can be broken down into two particular stories. So, say for instance, we want to add two online wallet methodologies. So for the first online wallet, we have PayPal, and for the second, we have Paytm. So as a customer, I want to be able to pay for my order through PayPal, and as a customer, I want to be able to pay for my order through Paytm. So these are these two stories that need to be completed. Now, after the epic has been broken down into stories, the Scrum team has to break that story down into technical tasks that are achieved in software development, right? So these stories can be broken down into add a pay through online wallet option. So up until now, we may have had a credit card option, a net banking option. Now we are adding a online wallet option. The second task would be to integrate this payment option with the PayPal API. And the third task would be to integrate this payment option with the Paytm API, right? So this is the entirety of the hierarchy that we are following currently, right? So this is how Scrum works, and this is what Scrum roles are. Sprint activities. So in Agile slash Scrum software development, we're not exactly creating long time windows of development. We are dividing these epics into stories, and we're dividing those stories into subtasks. Now, these tasks are miniature in nature, and they need to be completed within a short time frame. And this short time frame, this work that is done in that short time frame is called a sprint. And that is what makes this method so efficient, because by ensuring the timely delivery of small features, we're also ensuring the timely delivery of the software at a larger scale as well. So here we have an example of a Scrum board, which is basically describing a sprint activity. So for instance, from the previous example, we have our stories, right, which we have narrowed down in the stories column, and we have a to do column, we have an in progress column, we have a testing column, and we have a done column, right? So in the to do column, we'll have the features that we have currently not started with yet. In the in progress, whatever we are currently working on, that will be displayed over there. And in the testing, we'll have the feature that is being currently tested. So these are the tasks that were derived out of these stories, and we can currently see their status over here. Once they are completed, they will fall in the done section. So once they are in the done section, we can understand the exact meaning of a sprint. So a sprint is generally between 1 to 4 weeks. That is the general trend that is followed in the Scrum activity cycle. And then we also have to understand that there are daily 15-minute meetings at the beginning of the day, usually, which basically are used to recap what happened on the previous day for each of the member in the team and what they worked on. It is also used to define the present day goals as well. So now that we understand Agile and we understand Scrum and we understand what a sprint is, what is Jira and why are we using it, right? So firstly, we need to understand that Jira is a project management tool that is based on the same fundamental principle, which is the foundation of Agile, right? It is also an issue tracker which has been developed by the corporation known as Atlassian. So the primary two things that Jira is known for is the feature of bug tracking and agile project management, right? So we already understand what agile project management is. So we need to understand why we would use Jira in the first place for this. Why can't we manage it manually, right? So, for instance, it is an all-in-one solution for multiple software and team-related use cases. So, even if you're not working in an agile team or a Scrum team, Jira is still a solution for your other business perspectives as well. It is a very good tool for employee management for the following reasons. It helps you create backlogs. So, whatever tasks you have, whether you're working within a software development environment or not, you can easily create backlogs within it. Then you can create sprints. If you're working in an agile environment, then you can create tasks. You can update the status of these tasks, whether they are epic stories or actual tasks. Then you can manage multiple releases. So if you are specifically working for a software and that software has multiple releases, Jira has the feature to manage multiple releases at once. And then you have code integration. So Jira can easily be connected to your favorite code repository, whatever your organization is using, to better manage code as well. So these are the features of Jira. And finally, we have managing workflows. So based on the workflow that your particular organization follows, you can use that for your development cycle or your issue management cycle as well. And you also have the option of creating your own workflow or downloading third-party workflows that may work better for your use case. So this is why people like to use Jira. The primary advantage is that you can integrate it very easily with third-party applications as well. And because of how convenient it makes the process of software development and project management. So let us understand how to set up your own Jira dashboard, how to manage your own team, and how to get started with your agile project management. And we will also discuss the other features of Jira as well. Now, before we begin with the hands-on section, if you haven't liked this video by now, be sure to like it. And if you would like the PPT of what we just discussed, you can contact us in the comment section down below. We will be sure to get back to you. Let's talk about setting up Jira for your organization. So the first thing, obviously, after you've put in your email and opted for a version of Jira, you would be redirected to this page where you have to enter your organization's name or your website's name, right? So you can essentially type anything over here, and as long as it is uh, followed by .atlassian.net, it'll be fine. You can log into your terminal. So firstly, I'll type in something like Intellipaat 1, and then we're simply going to click on continue. So once we've clicked on continue, and over here, you can select what type of team you're working in currently. So if you're working in customer service, you can click on that. If you're working in software development, you can click on that. So I currently click on that, right? You can click on other things as well as to what sort of job role you have currently, right? So you can click on any of that. But for now, I will be skipping this question because we don't need that. You can skip all of these things and you can simply configure it from the actual UI itself. You don't need to necessarily give any details over here. So you click on skip question, right? So once you have done that, then you can simply start inviting your team. For starters, I currently do not have any members in my team, so I can simply enter their email addresses and an invite would be sent to them so that they can join my team. And from then on, we can assign them work, right? So for instance, I can add some email over here. So for instance, I'm going to enter here Intellipaat sample 1@gmail.com, and then I'll click on next. You can add other members as well, and you can give anyone the option to invite other people as well to this particular organization. So I'll click on next. Now over here you'll get two options, whether you're new to Jira or you're experienced with Jira. So if you've had some prior Jira training before, you can go with experienced with. I'll go to new to Jira, and then You can either select if your team is new to Agile methodologies, which is something that Jira follows, or it is something that your team is experienced with, right? So I'll simply click on experienced with. We spend our time working on, so we can select what kind of purpose we are fulfilling. So I'll simply write features, and then we have a tight or a flexible schedule to finish our work. We can simply select tight here, right? So depending on your work and depending on your use case, you can select all of that, right? And now we can select a template as to how our UI will look like. So I'll simply click on Scrum, right? I'll create a project name. So let us try to create a project name first. Let's call this feature underscore payment, right? And the key for this, which is something that we will refer to this project by, is FP. That is fine by me, right? And I'll click on create, right? So currently I am inside the project feature payment, right? And I have all of these options available to me. So let's go ahead and look at the left hand side. So we have the options such as backlog, active sprints. So we'll click on backlog and then we will create our epic. So I will just bring up the epic that we were discussing in the presentation earlier on. So this includes the, as a customer, I want to be able to pay for my orders through online wallets, right? So I have the option to create an epic right over here. So I'll click on that and I'll just name this epic something. So let us call this online underscore wallet underscore 01. And in the summary, we can add the description of it. So I'll just simply copy this and put it over here. And then I'll click on create. So we have currently created an epic, right? So within this epic, we can add stories as we had discussed earlier on as well. So there are multiple ways you can do that. There is a create issue option that you have right over here. So you have the option of using this to create your stories. Alternatively, you can simply look on the left hand side and look at this option over here, which is create issue in Epic. So we currently have our Epic created, right? And we can create our story within that itself. So within this, we can declare the issue type. So currently our issue type is a story, right? And within the story, we have our summary as well. So we'll just simply bring that up. So the first story that we have is, as a customer, I want to be able to be, so I'll select as a customer, I want to be able to pay for my orders through PayPal. I'll copy that and put that over here in the summary section. And I can add custom components within it. So whatever components I create in my project, I can attach those components in the story, and I can attach some documentation if I need to further describe what I want in my story. And I can describe it further as well with regards to any business or technical details that need to be added for that story, right? So if I scroll downwards, I can also assign the story to a particular team member, right? I can also assign a priority. And here we have the option of an epic link. So that is not currently available because it is automatically linked to the online wallet epic. If you create the story separately, then you will get the option to select the epic that you want to attach it to, right? And then I'll simply click on create, right? So within this epic, which is online wallet 1, I have successfully attached the first story, right? So similarly, I'll attach the second story as well, which is for Paytm. And we have two stories which are successfully available in this epic. So we have our stories ready and available. Now we need to create some subtasks that are going to be associated to these stories, right? So to get started with work, we will create a sprint. So here is our create sprint button. We'll click on that and it will create a default sprint called FP Sprint 1. You can go to the triple dot button over here to change the name of the sprint if you would like from FP Sprint 1 to something else. So when you want to add stories to your sprint, it is as simple as dragging the story and dropping it within the sprint. So we will drag both of our stories within the sprint. Now that we have successfully created our sprint, we need to start it as well for it to appear in the active sprint section. So we will click on this button, which is start sprint. So we have our sprint name over here. We can change the sprint name from this section as well. And we can provide a duration in which we expect the sprint to be completed. So generally it is from 1 to 4 weeks as we discussed. We can go with 2 weeks as it is a safe bet, and then we can essentially write a sprint goal if we would like, and we can also go for custom timings if we want a custom end date. We will go with 2 weeks for now, and we can write something like we need to add payment methods or something like that. So that is our sprint goal, right? And we will click on start. So once we click on start, we are automatically redirected to the active sprint section. And within the active sprint section, we can see our user stories, which is as a customer, I want to be able to pay through Paytm and through PayPal, right? Now we need to add the subtasks that are associated to these sprints. So these are the subtasks, right? So firstly, I will add this section over here. Click on this sprint, and here we can add some story points to this sprint, right? So for every particular feature that you have, you can add certain amount of story points, and that essentially tells you what sort of weightage it has in the software development lifecycle, whether it is a quantitative task or not, whether it will take a long time or not, right? So depending on how heavy this feature is, we'll add a story point. So here I'll just add a story point of 3. And since we're dealing with a similar feature on the other side as well, which is on PayPal, I'll add a story point of 3 as well, right? And the other thing that we can do is once we have created our stories, we can add assignees to our story, which is basically the owner of that story, the person who's going to be managing that story and ensuring that it is completed within the set amount of time. So within the assignee section, I can simply click and add any of the team members that I have added in my project. So I'll add Intellipaat worker, and that would be it. I'll add Intellipaat worker to this one as well and add the story point of 3. Now to create our subtasks. So for this one, I'll open it up, and here we have the option of create subtask. So I'll click on that, right? And it asks me what needs to be done. So for that, I'll simply copy paste the first option, which is add pay through wallet, and paste it over here and click on create. So that is the first subtask of the story. And the second subtask would be to add the PayPal or the Paytm option actually for this one. And we'll click on create, right? So we have added our 2 tasks. And then we can close this one, and we can add 2 subtasks to this story as well. So this one goes for this one. We'll click on create, and the second is add the PayPal API, and we'll add that as well. So we have added 2 successful subtasks to this particular story as well, right? And we can click on cross now so that it is saved. So we have our 2 stories in the to do section with 2 subtasks each. So keep in mind that you're not exactly expected to add tasks like this all the time. You can add them directly as well. So if you go to the backlog section over here and you look at the plus icon that you have over here, once you click on that, we have this little icon drop down. So within this, we have 3 options: story, task, and bug. We can go with task directly as well, and we can then specify what task needs to be done. Say I want to add a debit card, and I want to create that task. I'll simply click on this triple dot over here so that I can elaborate on this task. I can attach any documentation I want, any description I want, attach the person that I want to associate this task to, which is Intellipaat worker. I can attach the Epic link as well. So in this case, it is online wallet FP2, and then we can attach the sprint as well. The current sprint that we have created is FP Sprint 1. So it makes it really convenient for us. Once we click on create, it will automatically get assigned within that sprint as we can see. So once we go back in the active sprint section, other than the 2 subtasks for each of the story that is available already, we have a separate task as well, which is a add a debit card option. So we can further specify the constraints for this one as well. The other great thing about it is that you can create subtasks within this task as well. So you're not limited to the traditional story to task architecture that Scrum usually follows. You can manipulate it a little bit according to your own use case. We had also discussed that Jira is a bug tracking software as well. So say within the software development lifecycle, you're trying to implement a feature. That feature is not working out in the testing phase, even though the application is working correctly. So that potentially becomes a bug that you need to solve as a developer. Right. So bugs are handled separately in Jira. You can create an issue for a bug, and within this you have options. So there are multiple options. As we discussed tasks earlier on, we can also create a bug, right? So say for instance, GPay API not integrating. So this is a potential bug that is preventing users from being able to use a tool like GPay to be able to essentially conduct their transactions, right? So I'll simply click on the triple dot option over here. It works in the same way as a task does. We can provide the summary, we can provide the description, we can provide the exact component of the software that it is related to, and then further on we can assign a worker to it, right? And we can attach an epic link to it, we can attach a sprint to it as well, and then we can click on create, right? So we have currently we have two stories with two subtasks each, one task and one bug in our sprint that need to be resolved. So here we can see the entirety of the sprint details. We can look at each task, see what is currently pending, what is in progress, and what is done. And if you're dwelling into much more complex project issues, you can simply go to the components and create the subcomponents of the project by creating component, right? You can name a component anything. For instance, we can add a login component over here, and description helps users log in. We can assign a lead for that if we have anything. So we can simply search for the people that we have in our organization. So for instance, we can assign an Intellipaat worker to that, and we can click on save, right? So when we do that, we have a component available over here. And then we move on from the component section to the code sections. For instance, if you have any online code repository like Bitbucket, GitHub, or GitLab, you have easy integration options available here, right? You can use Bitbucket, you can use the other services like GitHub, you can connect to the other providers, right? And you can install the services needed for you to automate your workflow. So you can simply go ahead and add this particular extension, which is GitHub for Jira, if you want to integrate with GitHub. And then we have releases. So whatever project you're working on, whatever versions that project has, you can simply track that over here. So currently, if you're working on a particular project version, you can create that version and then you can subsection that in the work log. You can also go to the project settings and customize your own workflows. So if you go to the workflows options in the project settings, you'll have this particular option over here, which says software simplified workflow for project FP, right? You can add other workflows as well. So we can add existing workflows that are available. So we can simply wait for this loading to happen. So currently, this is the builds workflow that is there, right? And if we go to the Jira workflow option, we have this option available over here, which says the project opens, and then we have other options which says the issue is closed or if the issue goes into progress. And then you have the Jira workflow and you have classic default workflow. So these workflows essentially refer to how you're going to resolve your issues and how they can be reopened in the case of any further complications that arise from it. So these are the workflows that you can use that are currently there. And say if you want to add a workflow that is not there, you want to simply go to search for workflows and get any other additional module that you can get from the marketplace. Now there is the task of time tracking, for instance. So if you want to time track your employees, depending on what sort of work they're doing, so basically you can go to the time tracking feature over here. So if your employee has a target based approach to working, or if the task that has been given to the employee is target based, then time tracking would not be necessary. necessary. But if your employee has to do quantitative work, then time tracking may be necessary. So you have your default time tracking provider, which is the Jira provided time tracking, right? And then you can customize all of these options from over here by going to the edit global settings option. Right, from over here, you can select how many hours you want to allocate for employees per day, how many working days essentially, and then you can see over here how they would see the time that is being displayed and how you would see the time of how much they have worked in that particular day, right? And then you can simply click on save. Say you have multiple employees in your organization and you want to create teams, you can go to the people's option and click on start a team, right? So you can name the team anything. So we can call this the front end team and click on start team, right? And then you can simply click on people again, and then you'll have access to the members of that team. So if I simply open the front end team, right? Here we can add people to this team. So if I want to add someone like Intellipaat worker, I can add that particular person to the team, and you can add as many people as you would like in that team, depending on the subscription that you have. So for the free subscription, you only get to add 10 members in your organization. You need to go for a premium one if you want to add more, right? So here we can add particular links that are relevant to this team. They can share, they can talk with each other through these links, and you can see what they are working on currently.
Okay guys, we've come to the end of this session. I hope this session was helpful and informative for you. If you have any doubts, leave a comment below and we'll out to help you out. Thank you guys. Meet you in another session.